One of the issues that real estate agents have that we encounter over and over that they want help with is time management and eliminating distractions. So, at our last company meeting, we had Nora Simpson present to our team on how to eliminate distractions for your life, the psychology of time management, and how to efficiently use their time to work with clients and make better use of their workday. Welcome to the Realty Hack Podcast.
She is a productivity expert, and Nora, I'll let you kind of give your bio because I think you'll probably do
That's
it
fine.
a little bit better than me, and head
No,
right
it's
into
all
your
good.
spiel.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, you guys. Yay! So, Neuroscience of Overcoming Distractions is usually a 6-week boot camp. How do I know we double productivity? We double productivity because we double close deals within those 6 weeks, and we shorten work days. So that's really fun. My second most popular class is called the Neuroscience of Sales Success. And I want you to know why Anthony's brilliant strategy for all of those like little sweet, awesome value driving touches between making the appointment and having the appointment works. I'm just going to like share my screen super quick. It works because what I teach is that there's this rule of 7 in sales, which I stole from like the Harvard MBA marketing people. So basically, with every 7 high-quality, value-driving interactions, human relationships graduate to the next level. So what Anthony's doing so brilliantly is he's creating value-driving, socially appropriate interactions between appointment setting and appointment itself so that people have massive trust in you when you show up for that appointment. So way to go. And it was just so creative and so fabulous. Like, I'm so glad Ryan, like God had got you all his training. Like his training looks awesome. So, okay, let's jump in. While I'm sharing my screen for the PowerPoint, I'm just gonna like brag about myself a little bit. Please forgive me. I know it's different in Texas than it is in New York, but I'll try to like not sound too grandiose. So what do I want to tell you guys? So I've been doing this for 11 years. I started developing these neuroscience-based theories, which are based on a framework for understanding all human behavior that I started inventing when I was a teenager. I'm actually from New Orleans. Everybody in New Orleans always told me I talk too fast, right? That's why I ended up in New York. So I've been developing these theories for 25 years. I've been so blessed to work with more than 500 companies, more than 20,000 people across 80 industries, but I do work with a ton of real estate folks. I've actually worked with over 200 agents and agent teams. I give talks for real estate firms across the country. I've done a lot for Keller Williams. So yay, so glad we're all here together. And we're going to do this in 30 minutes. Are you guys excited? Feel free to come off mute. Feel free to pepper me with questions. I love questions. You can see I've turned my office into a kindergarten classroom, made sure my kid's pod was at the other mom's house today. Okay, that's the dinosaur stickers behind me. All right, so we're going to go nice and fast. Work stress. It's huge. It's growing. Everybody agree? Good. Researchers started catching on that technology was doing something to our brains in the workplace in around 2005. They figured out that it started with the introduction of email in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, depending on where you were and where you worked back then. Basically, in 2005, when the research community first starts to sniff this out, they figure out that people are losing about 2 hours a day just from the pain of interruptions, just from the distractibility of interruptions from email and instant message and things like that. By 2015, the research community was saying, wow, we think we might actually be losing 4 to 6 hours a day minimum. Between 2005 and 2015, maybe you guys heard about this thing. It's called Facebook, Instagram, right? Social media came along, right? But it's not just technology. It's not just this like block O distraction that lives with all of us, right? It's actually that our entire behavior around communication has been reshaped. So Gloria Mark is one of my favorite researchers in this area. She basically has done a ton of studies. I'm going to summarize them for you. The average length of time we work before we get interrupted by a colleague is 7.8 minutes. The average length of time we work before we interrupt ourselves and go interrupt our colleagues is 8.6 minutes. So, and that research was done, those studies were done between 2008 and 2012. So I think the numbers are actually worse now. I think we actually work for a smaller amount of time. Now, who here can relate to this idea? Somebody knocks on your door, or maybe you're working from home because we're in a pandemic, and they shoot you a text, hey, you got 2 minutes for me, right? They're lying. Right? Anthony just told you customers lie to you. Everyone else lies to you too. They're lying. They're not going to take 2 minutes of your time. They're going to take whatever they take, and then it's going to take you about 30 minutes, 32 minutes to get back to your original task. If you're the one who interrupts your task and you go ask them a question, you have a chance of getting a 34-minute recovery time, right? So if you're the instigator, you suffer more. And regardless of who starts the interruption, there's a 30% chance that you won't resume your task that you've interrupted at all that day. A few more statistics to scare the pants off you. 2.8 second interruption will double your error rate. So even if you're not taking a full work sphere move, even if you're just going, can't talk to you right now, mom, right? Just like, whoop, delete, decline. Even if it's 2.8 seconds, you're going to double your error rates. And that means you're going to take longer to do stuff that shouldn't take you that long. 4.4 second interruption, that's just you pressing okay on your phone. Just like, the hubby, the wifey, like they're like, hey, do you want Chinese for dinner tonight? And you're like, okay. That's going to triple your error rate. Triple your error rates. Why? Because multitasking is an illusion. The brain lies to you. Your brain, like you think you lie to other people and they lie to you. You also lie to yourself all the time. Again, I don't want to take too much time on this because I want to make sure we get to have lots of questions, and I want to make sure we get to like lots of solution. But basically, a turned off smartphone, thanks to the wonderful research of Adrienne Ward down in y'all's neck of the woods in UT Austin, a turned off smartphone on your desk will lower your cognitive capacity by significant and measurable percentage points. It will lower your cognitive capacity more if you can see it, even if it's off. It will lower your cognitive capacity less, but still measurably if it's in your pocket, but still off. If it's actually out of the room and you can't see it and you don't know where it is, or you don't know it's in the room with you, that's when you're actually operating at maximum capacity, which means you are not getting my maximum cognition right now. I'm sorry, sucks for you guys. And the other thing you should know is that it's completely invisible to our brains. The compromise to our cognition is completely invisible. Whenever Adrienne Ward over at UT has administered these tests and had the different students have the turned off phones on their desks, in their pockets, in the other room, in a locker, right? They take a survey after these tests and it says, hey, were you performing at your highest cognitive level? And everybody says, I sure was. Yep, everything was cool. Didn't get distracted. So the mere presence of a turned off phone will reduce your capacity to engage. So yes, we're all addicted to distraction. I'm not going to go too deep into the neuroscience behind it. I'm just going to tell you that there's this thing in your brain called glucose, right? It comes from the food you eat. Basically, you deplete your brain glucose faster the more you distract. There's this other thing in your brain. It's called the dopamine feedback loop. It drives the urge to distract, right? It drives the urge to look down at your phone like Ryan's doing right now. And don't worry, Ryan, I had to text my babysitter. And like I spotted because I got it, I had to text my babysitter like just as Anthony was wrapping up. And I'm like, I'm missing this. I have no idea what he's saying because I have to tell her that like the pod mom doesn't know the thing we have to tell her later. Shoot. Okay.
I was writing questions for you.
Oh, now I feel special. Love you even
kidding.
more. Okay. I'm like working mother over here, doing my thing. So dopamine feedback loop. So the thing about the dopamine feedback loop is it's the same process in the brain that drives heroin addiction. And the essence of it is that when you don't use the drug, by the way, is this little guy, right? Or even just, hey, Chris, can I ask you a quick question, right? Just that distraction, just that taking the edge off, right? Hey, Allie, did you ever get back in touch with that buyer? Right? That just something as small as that is something that the brain tells you will take the edge off, right? Will make you less uncomfortable. Whatever that discomfort is, you're looking to make yourself less uncomfortable because the brain thinks discomfort means there might be a saber-toothed tiger hiding. So we want to go away from discomfort. Discomfort is saber-toothed tiger land, right? But the urge to do that is driven by this dopamine feedback loop, which intentionally creates more stress, more cortisol, that's the stress hormone, more adrenaline, that's the fight or flight hormone, the more you avoid the distraction or the drug, right? So if you're a heroin addict, I mean, have you guys seen these movies, right? About like the people who are like jonesing, right? Like, and they get crazier and crazier, right? As they're like waiting for the drug, right? They're like, where is it, right? That's your brain. Your brain is engaging in the exact same process. No matter how many books you read about like, oh, I got to focus, I got to do my meditation, right? Your brain will create an entire reality, making you more and more uncomfortable until it gets you to believe the lie that you have to use the drug, and the drug is distraction. So basically, that's what an addiction is. An addiction is feeling bad when you're not using the drug so that your brain gets tricked into using the drug much more than any reasonable person would ever choose. People are chatting me. Ooh, we can talk about that, Pippa. I'm so glad you guys are enjoying this presentation. Yay, let's keep going. All right, so perception of complexity, dramatizing response. You don't know, Nora, it's so hard. My life is so hard. Oh my God, right? Minimizing response. I can quit anytime, right? I'm good, whatever. You know, I just do a little bit, right? Just so you know, it's easier to help the drama queens than the minimizers. So much easier. The drama queens are like, Nora, after I finish crying, I'm really going to change my behavior, okay? And the minimizers are like, what problem, right? Always easier to solve a problem if you know it's there, right? So what interrupts the addiction-driven complexity loop? Simplicity. But simple does not mean easy. So I'm going to tell you like a soup of my personal story, just so you know I'm kneeling beside you. You're not alone. I've been in 12-step recovery for 15 years. That's why you hear me talk about addiction so much. I know it from the inside out. I was never cool enough to be an alcoholic or a drug addict. I was that crazy eating disorder girl who was like president of every club in high school, right? And Overeaters Anonymous saved my life, actually, 15 years ago, by the grace of God, a day at a time. And then once I wasn't hurting myself with food every single day and burying my feelings in food so that I could go off and be an overachiever, and I kid you not, like I graduated magna cum laude from Columbia. My first job out of college was for the United Nations. Like I was going to be in charge of the world, right? But once I actually got the food under control, I couldn't keep a job. And I got fired from 3 jobs in 6 months. And I got a lot of help from a lot of different places and basically figured out that I was as addicted to distraction, like I had switched seats on the Titanic, right? The way I had once been addicted to eating baby carrots all day so that I didn't have to feel my feelings, now I was distracting compulsively at work. And what worked for me, great, Gabby, awesome. What worked for me was to create a plan and plan to abstain from distractions across a certain number of hours per day, the same way that I abstained from hurting myself with food between healthy meals, right? So the food addiction recovery was actually a big influence on this thing that I invented for myself. And on the first day that I did it, what I didn't expect is I didn't expect the experience of abstaining from distraction to feel like being beaten with a metal pole physically. It was so much more painful than I ever imagined, physically painful. But I did have one reference for that physical pain. It was the same physical pain I had felt when I was actually able to move from hurting myself with food to having a day count, what we call abstinence in the food recovery program. So I did have one reference for it. And I was like, oh, this must be a good pain, right? So I kept pursuing it. And basically, I won't go into all the details because we've got short time and I want you guys to ask lots of questions, but I started sharing about it with all these 12-step people. And by the way, I was in like 3 12-step programs by then. Like I was like always like, you know, overachieving everywhere, right? And people started coming up to me and they were like, okay, what are you doing? Because you used to come to meetings and look homeless. And now you're like coming to meetings in business suits and talking about it getting promoted. And in fact, I did get promoted 3 times in 9 months in this job where I started using this thing. It was an executive recruiting job, so very salesy and like lots of fun, right? So I started teaching it to other people, and that's when I figured out how to actually talk about the stuff and the way that it worked. So the first thing you should know is that when you make a commitment to abstain from distractions and you actually keep your commitment, it will be massively painful. But it will only be massively painful for 3 minutes if you keep your commitment. And that's what most people don't know. They don't know that that discomfort that like jangles their nerves, that it's very temporary. And what they also don't know is that if you interrupt that nerve jangling 3 minutes, I call this the 3-minute bridge. If you interrupt that 3-minute jangle of your nerves, your 3-minute bridge resets to 0. So what people do when they're distracting is they give themselves the opportunity to start this 3-minute bridge probably dozens of times per day. And then they get uncomfortable and their brain says, check your email. Just make sure nobody came, just make sure nobody needs you, just look at the phone once, right? And they get that instantaneous relief for a few seconds, but then that 3-minute bridge resets to 0 and things are uncomfortable again. And they play that game and they're in that discomfort dance for the whole day. Now, I have a whole bunch of tools I teach. I can't teach them all to you in half an hour or an hour, but I'm trying to give you some of my favorites that are implementable right away, right? Anthony's liking it. All right, Anthony. The thing about the 3-minute bridge is you can start using it now. You can start using it today. You can set timers. You can set a timer for 15 minutes and be like, I'm going to do nothing else. I'm going to put my computer on airplane mode, right? I'm not even going to like allow, and just so you know, my Dell, what is this thing called? My Focus Assist. My Focus Assist has been on for like 7 years, right? Like don't let the computer tell you stuff is due. That's BS, right? So basically, here's the other thing about the 3-minute bridge. The thing about the 3-minute bridge is that once you get past the 3 minutes, every single task, no matter how much you think you hate it, becomes pleasurable because you drop into the flow of doing. And the flow of doing is actually really lovely for human beings. It's like that meditative flow state. It's pretty great. Okay, so I know we're short on time. I just want to be really thoughtful about time. Okay, so we make work plans. What else? Oh, and then here's case studies. So what do you guys want? Do you guys want questions? Do you guys want case studies? Do you want to hear more about more of the tools and how the work plans work, how the boot camps work? You tell me. I'm here for you. We've got 11 minutes, people.
Let's, you want to see if anybody has any questions they want to ask. I will say that I'm an extremely ADD person and suffer from distractions like crazy. I've gotten better at turning my computer on Do Not Disturb, and really, like, if I'm in my CRM, I try to remove Facebook, remove inbox, all that stuff, and really focus on it. And I think one of the things that agents will suffer from is that they think that they need to be so available all the time. They need to be available for a new lead. They need to be available for, and I hear agents say this all the time. It's like, oh, I'm always right on top of everything. And I think that is a complete myth. I mean, some days I go hours without checking my email on purpose. And a true professional does not have the time to respond instantaneously. Okay. So, putting these methods into place, and we always say with marketing and with everything, go deep, not wide, right? Well, you're going to go deeper by focusing on one lead at a time, one contact at a time, rather than being everything to everyone. And that's what these distractions are. If you want to do better service, then you're going to spend more time on each person.
Ryan, your intuition is spot on. And now I'm going to give you some tools and facts that are going to like turbocharge. Are you excited?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So a couple of thoughts. So one of the things I do with people when I do the boot camps, right, is we actually design, because remember, part of our problem is that we sabotage each other and we sabotage ourselves without knowing it, right? One of the things we do in boot camps is we actually create a structure where we have planned times for distraction, planned times for communication within the team, and planned times that were like, like quiet hours. Like, remember in college when like you weren't allowed to like make noise, like on certain, like during certain hours on like the dorm floor, like there are certain quiet hours times when like everybody's supposed to like shut up, not ask each other questions, and actually get work done. Now that can mean lots of sales calls. That can mean, working on a contract, whatever it means, right? We create morning accountability around that. We create lots of opportunities for there to be communication and distraction in a very monitored, measured, structured way, right? What we find when we apply these structures is that 90% of like questions that come up on the fly, 90% of questions are predictable, right? Like the reasons we do interrupt each other, we're like, oh, quick question, Ryan, I needed to ask for your help. 90% of those questions are predictable. And the other 10% can usually wait for the scheduled communication times across the day, right? Here's another piece of information that's useful for when we put these structures into place. In point of fact, you become much more effective at giving an impression to prospects and customers that you are organized and I'm having mommy brain. What's the word I'm looking for? Like on top of your communication and very reliable about returning calls and returning emails, right? When you give yourself, okay, I've got half an hour between 8:30 and 9 to check email. I've got half an hour between 11:30 and 12 to check email, right? I've got 12 to 1 for communication, distraction, catch up. I've got 45 minutes from 3:30 to 4:15, right? When you're actually looking at your emails and your text messages at scheduled times, you're much more efficient and you're much less likely to lose the thread, right? You're much less likely to miss something, right? Rather than trying to be available within 5 minutes for everybody. I promise you, when you're at a closing and you're bringing that bottle of champagne to the client, right? I promise you're not looking at your phone and trying to respond within 5 minutes. Right? I know you know how to not respond to people for an hour or two, right? And I know you feel no guilt about not responding to people for 2 hours and then getting back to them. And in point of fact, 99.9% of questions and text messages and emails, if they get a response within 2 hours, that's fantastic for them, right? Here's the other piece about that, Ryan, and everybody. Now that you know this stuff, now that you'll begin to start shifting and changing how you deal with all this, right? And our boot camps are really important because they're about radical compassion for the brain. They're not about beating ourselves up, because the more we beat ourselves up, the more we raise the cortisol and adrenaline, and the stronger the urges to distract actually become. So it has to be really like kick butt, like way to go, we're going for the gold with radical compassion. I know it sounds cray-cray, but it's very useful for two reasons. It doesn't just lower the temperature on the dopamine feedback loop in your brain, which is nice, right? Your brain needs to feel safe in order to make change, right? It also radically increases your empathy, your intuition, and your capacity to understand what all those prospects and customers are going through who aren't getting back to you. Is half of the reason they're not getting back to you the fact that you asked them too soon about whether or not they're pre-approved? Of course, yes. There's lots of important strategy about what you say in your communication. But the other half, fully half of the reason that people don't get back to you is that they lose the thread. They are distracted. There are 20, 30 reasons people aren't getting back to you. Some of that's, some of that can be fixed with better sales strategy. Some of that can be fixed with better communication, better intuition, better empathy. Right? All of those like soft skills that Anthony was talking about, right? And like particular systems and processes. But fully the biggest number one factor, that's a bigger factor in everyone's behavior, all prospects, all clients, all customers, right? Number one factor is distractibility.
Yeah,
because distraction is stealing so much time. Go ahead, Ryan.
This ties into it, but I've always taught about with negotiations, right? So I'll give you an example. This is about getting back to people and doing two things. I'm a big believer in not getting back to someone very fast for multiple reasons, right? But one of those reasons is like, we'll get an offer on a property, okay? And I never send that offer right away, never, okay? And the reason why is because anything that's important is worth considering. If you don't want to have, like if we were to get 10 offers and I send 10 offers to people, it's too much to absorb, right? If an agent, if an agent counters me on an offer and I talk to the seller right then and then they give me the response, I never go back to that person right away and say, guess what? I just talked to them, you got a deal. Because I think and not in just the sense of eliminating distractions, but it's also a negotiation tactic, right? Meaning you're supposed to respond in a reasonable amount of time. Reasonable is not 1 minute. I think there's something to be said about the psychology of a negotiation where if people get a response too quickly in a negotiation, they may think it'd be too good to be true.
It's also a way of feeding power to them that they don't deserve.
Right.
You want to be on the same level, right? So, and I teach a neuroscience of negotiation piece as well. And you want to make sure it's not so much that the same rules always hold. It's much more that you want to make sure you're reading the power dynamics of the negotiation and you're matching the power dynamics in that negotiation, right? You might have a situation, right? It's rare, but it happens, right? Where somebody goes, oh my God, I love these buyers. They're so cute. They remind me of my daughter when she was buying her first home. Oh my God, I love them so much. Like, when do we get, right? You get that. And the buyer is like, oh my God, I love these sellers. They're so nice. Like, I just want to do everything right with them, right? If that's happening, it's okay to go fast because everybody loves each other and everybody wants to feel like the love is there. And who knows, like maybe someday, like the seller will become the godmother to the child of like that the buyer is pregnant with, you know, like you want to be thoughtful and matching of the dynamic of the negotiation. And your job as an agent is to be that master of understanding what's happening between these people. Right? Much more frequently, as you're saying, Ryan, much more frequently, people are in their fear mode. They're in their, am I getting a good deal mode? Am I getting a good price mode, right? Am I getting a good return on this investment I've owned for 30 years? The biggest number I've ever spent in my whole life, right? This is my life savings right here. You know, much more common. You've got people going, oh, okay, you know, is this really working? And you as the agent have to kind of manage everybody's emotions. And that's why the neuroscience of sales is something, and the neuroscience of negotiation is something that a lot of real estate agents seem to really like, right? Great. These are such great pieces of information, Ryan. And I'll tell you, when I do my boot camps, I actually include the entire neuroscience of sales curriculum, because one of the things I find about the drivers for distraction is that once you get that, you're using distraction and you're using poor time management to take the edge off, right? Then you actually have to face what on earth is causing the edge. And usually what on earth is causing the edge is fear of failure, right? And fear of saying, like, fear of like not having a skill that's important, right? And so giving people better frameworks and better functionality and skill sets is part of how we solve the distraction addiction. Because almost always we've picked up an addiction to cope with the fact that we don't actually know what the answers are in life. Life is an ever-changing experience, right? This pandemic is like ridiculous. We have to reinvent the rules over and over, right? So in order, like the nice thing about the neuroscience stuff that I teach is that it's all very integrated and it gives you a framework for not just stopping distractions, but acquiring skill sets within the framework that I teach for human behavior. And what I find with my clients when I check back with them 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, is that it gives you a framework for continuing to build skills and knowledge beyond what I teach you. Because what I'm going to teach you is how the brain works. But there's loads of great skills to be built over time. There's loads of great transformation to have. Anthony obviously has some great ideas, right? There's loads of great stuff. You're going to have a framework for staying focused, staying productive, and staying learning as you grow and expand, which is what, you know, all business owners want, right? So
how do we find you, and how do you find your services? And
thank you for asking. Okay.
I can definitely post your website in Workplace too, Nora.
Oh, exciting. Okay, so go to norascience.co. So that's Nora, that's my name, science, SCIENCE .co. That's the fastest, easiest way to do it, and the most memorable if this is a podcast, right? So Nora, N-O-R-A, science, like neuroscience, but Nora Science, get it? norascience.co. That's the fastest way. There's a book a call button all over that website. Feel free to click that book a call button and put a time on my calendar. God bless you. There's also more information about the neuroscience of sales and productivity on that website. So you're more than welcome to check out norascience.co. I can give you my direct calendar link just for the people here. That one's much harder to get from a podcast, but I can give you that.
Do you have a Facebook group?
Oh, I'll share my screen. There, Neuroscience Tribe.
Oh,
so please join my Neuroscience Facebook group. Yeah. Michelle Gonzalez just asked to join. Thank you, Michelle.
Awesome. Well, Nora, thanks so much. I really appreciate this. This is really helpful. And we will be following you online.
I can't wait. Can't wait. All right. Thanks so much, everybody.